Sponsored in part by Pediatric Associates of Dallas. Pediatric Associates of Dallas has been providing excellence in pediatric medicine since 1971. PAD has locations in Dallas and Plano and is now open 7 days a week because taking care of kids is what we do.
The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional legal advice, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your attorney, advocate, physician, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding any medical or educational concerns.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to Empower Dyslexia. I'm Stephen Yearout.
And I'm Rachel Chambers.
And we're here to help you become a better informed partner in education.
Yes.
On this show, we talk about dyslexia and other related disorders. We interview people in related fields, and I have completely screwed that up.
No, you haven't. Just keep going.
Jeez.
We do research, or not. We don't do research, but we just discuss research.
We discuss research, and we discuss policies, special education policies on local, state, and federal level. We talk to people about personal stories and interview experts in the field.
Yeah.
Can't believe I just completely messed that whole thing up. Jeez. Please make sure that you like us, follow us, subscribe, give us reviews on our Facebook and YouTube channels, and make sure that if you listen to podcasts mostly, you can find us on all of our favorite apps: iTunes, Google Play, Alexa, Spotify, AnyPod, Stitcher, TuneIn, all of those. Make sure you write us a review because that helps us with our sponsors.
Yes, and we need sponsors. So, hey, here's a thought. I'm just going to throw this out there. If anybody would like to sponsor our show, please contact us. You can email us via our website or call us. And
www.empowerdyslexia.info.
Yeah, we would be happy to talk to you about that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so today's topic is really today's topic is fabulous parents, I think, and their efforts that, they're really harrowing, I think, efforts that have been done, that they've done in Arkansas. It's just amazing. So we have a mom on today who is part of the support group. Her name is Abby Carter Jones, and she lives in Arkansas, in Little Rock. And I'm just going to give you a little background on Abby real quick.
Amber.
What did I say? Abby? Jeez Louise.
It's wheels off today.
We have not had enough coffee this morning.
It's a little earlier than normal today, guys. I think it's fine.
Right? Okay. Amber, let me repeat. Okay, Amber Carter Jones. Where did I get Abby? Anyways, I'm sorry, I have to laugh at myself now. Okay, Amber's real job is a historic preservation consultant working throughout the state of Arkansas. She is a specialist in the federal and state historic tax credits and lists properties to the National Register. Amber's 3 daughters are all affected by dyslexia. However, it was her youngest who struggled the most and could not figure out reading or spelling at all, at least the way the school was teaching her. The typical struggles with getting her child appropriate educational services led Amber to become a passionate dyslexia advocate for other students and families affected by dyslexia. She, along with some other parents, have founded the Arkansas Dyslexia Support Group, which provides free advocacy services to parents of students with dyslexia. The group has been effective, very effective, I should say, at the state legislature with the passage of 2 dyslexia laws, not 1, 2, and 4 literacy laws passed concerning the science of reading. And that's really what I'd like to touch on today is the science of reading. And this applies to all kindergarten through 12th grade students, which I'm excited to have Amber on today. Are you with us, Amber?
I am now.
Oh,
I'm trying not to laugh. But
I know. Sorry. So sorry for calling you
Watch out.
Abby.
We'll be calling you something completely different here in a
Annie.
little bit.
well, you know, the joy of dyslexia. But
Right.
anyway.
Right? There you go.
It's acting up this morning.
It's acting up bad. So embarrassed. So how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. I'm excited to be on Empowering Dyslexia.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. I gave a little bit of a bio, but so tell us about yourself and why dyslexia is, important to you and why you guys do what you do.
Well, you touched on it a little bit when you mentioned my youngest daughter. If it had not been for this kiddo, I would not be doing what I'm doing now. I didn't realize that our older two children were affected. They seemed to really be able to compensate and figure out reading, and they appeared to be reading. I think when they hit the wall started hitting the wall in middle school and high school. But again, I wasn't really noticing that. I was thinking that, they just weren't doing their homework. But my youngest daughter in kindergarten, toward the middle of kindergarten, the teacher started telling me, she is, falling behind. She's not where she needs to be with everybody, but don't worry, she'll catch up. I'm sure she's just a late bloomer. And toward the end of kindergarten, one of the things that happened that I think that has affected her entire life now, she's 16. The teacher's husband is a psychologist, and this is kindergarten. And they were going around the room trying to read, supposedly what they'd been taught to read. And when it was Rory's turn, she messed up, and all the kids laughed at her. And she went under the table. And and I couldn't believe the teacher was telling me this happened. But she said that her husband happened to be visiting that day, and he told her that she could not do that anymore, that it was just too damaging to children, to be laughed at that early by their peers. And this year at one of our 504 meetings, we discussed that, and Rory sat there and cried about that experience. And I think that's really, affected her.
What grade was that?
That was kindergarten.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I mean, that
It
just
starts
goes
that early,
Yeah, it
you
goes
know?
to show that these events stay with you.
Well, but it's, just the psychological impact. And of course now, there's a lot more studies with the correlation of dyslexia and suicide and anxiety and depression. But yeah, I mean, so that early. And of course, I was very new to this, of having a child that was really, really struggling, and looking to the teachers as the educational professionals who should know what to do about it. And of course, they all kept telling me, oh, she's a little bit behind, but she's just a late bloomer. We know she's going to get it. That was what I was told in first grade when I asked about it. And of course, I was being asked, are you reading 20 minutes every night? And at the end of second grade, they break, depending on what the school is using, her school broke into the different bird color groups, like the blue birds, the red birds. And at the end of school, she was so far behind, she was no longer in a bird reading group. And I asked her teacher, I said, well, what do you do with her every day if she's not in one of these groups anymore? And she said, well, we just work on vowel and consonant sounds. And this kid is smart, and I said, no offense, but if she was going to get it by going over it one more time, she would have already gotten it. And I asked the teacher about, pulling that trigger on special ed. So many people still feel like special ed has a stigma. And I don't know that I felt that it was a stigma, but I just felt like that's the next step for trying to get some help. And the teacher actually told me, we go to a public charter school, and she told me, she said, well, we don't do that here. And I'm just like, well, you're a public school, you do this here. And she was a new teacher, first year, very young, wonderful girl. But And anyway, again, it's the end of school. This charter school only has 5 weeks of summer for elementary students. And so at the end of school, the psychological examiner told me that it was perplexing that Rory could not read because she was doing math 2 grade levels ahead and reading 2 grade levels behind. And she would only write simple sentences because those are the things that she could spell, sort of. And so it was really limiting her. She said she can talk a lot higher than she can write her thoughts. And I said, well, could it be dyslexia? My husband is dyslexic. And she said, oh, well, I don't know. That's a medical term. You'll have to ask your doctor. And I thought, well, I'll play your silly game. So I'll go to the pediatrician, and I asked her, and she was like, she said, no, I don't, really have anything to do with dyslexia.
Yeah, pediatricians don't do dyslexia. They can refer you on to get evaluated or have some people that they recommend, or basically they send you back to your school and say your school needs to evaluate you.
Yeah, so
I'm married to a pediatrician. That's
I'm sure you've educated.
You may know what you're talking about.
I mean, that's what they do. That's what he does. So,
and I think it's like parents. You come across one that's had some experience and maybe knows a little bit more than the typical. But anyway, so I somehow I talked to someone in the speech and language department at our local college and described what was going on. And she said, oh, it's just dyslexia. She said, here's the names of 5 tutors. Call one of these ladies. I trained them like 20 years ago in Take Flight. And that's what you need to do. Quit crying, quit being upset over it. This is what you need to do. And again, I had 5 weeks to figure this out because school was starting again. And Rory was crying every day about going to school. She was crying when I picked her up from school because of the trauma she was experiencing every day. My story is so typical of what all parents experience. And so I did. I called one of these ladies, and most of them, honestly, they were full. And I think that's kind of how dyslexia tutors operate. They stay full. And so it was difficult to get in. And then no one prepares for, needing to teach their child how to read privately. You've expected the school to be doing this all along. So then I had to find the money to pay for this. And it was, at that time, it was like $45 an hour. And we were doing 4 hours a week. And even the tutoring company, the one I chose worked out of an office. She said, oh, you need to discuss this with your husband and make sure you can afford this. And I was just like, I will discuss it, but we're doing this. And I borrowed money from my parents. And when we got started, and I have the graphs and the charts and the data to show her growth. It was amazing. In 4 or 5 months' time, she had caught up with her class of 3rd graders. And then by the end of 3rd grade, she had surpassed her classmates.
Wow.
With her skill level. And then she did that tutoring for 2 years until she finished the program. So anyway, at that time, I was just focused on my child. And of course, a few people that I would run into, or the school. Once I figured out, oh my gosh, everybody could learn to read this way. And all these kids that are dyslexic, when I'm doing all this research, Susan Barton's website is a great resource to teach yourself if you're new to this. And I send the link to her website to parents all the time, just because it's just a great resource. But whether you use Barton system or not. But, I went to our school principal and I was like, this is awesome. Y'all could do this, and you could teach all the kids this way, and everybody would learn. And of course they smile and nod their heads. And at one point our school did get the Barton reading and spelling system for their special ed kids. And the principal came to me and said, Amber, we've gotten this program, and Rory can do this program, and you don't have to pay this expensive cost.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yes.
We're going to go ahead and provide fate now.
Yeah, we're going to provide free and appropriate public education.
And so what we all that have been in this game know, I called Susan Barton, and I'm not even using her program. I'm using some other program, Take Flight, and with an experienced tutor. And I said, Miss Barton, my school is going to do this, and they've suggested I stop what I'm doing and not have to pay these exorbitant fees and get free intervention. And she told me not to do it. She said they won't do it right. They're new to this. And she said, you need to keep doing what you're doing. Mm. And I just have so much respect for her. And I've talked to her a lot in recent years. That's one of the deals with our advocacy group. We really just reach out and go talk to people. But anyway, so at that time, I'm focused on my kid and paying these bills and, getting her accommodations. Her teachers, they didn't understand. They were just like, so when she's out with the tutor's going to work with what she's missing in class, right? And I'm just like, no, we're not worried about what she's missing in class. We're worried about learning how to read. And they were just, honestly, just clueless. Not trying to be mean or anything, but they just, they're just so unaware. And I really wanted to do more at that time to help other people, but I was just kind of drowning with my own child. And, because it just affects your whole household.
Sure.
And anyway, so some time went on. I think by the time she was in 6th grade, and we had just different ups and downs. She had teachers that just would not follow her accommodations. And even though she'd finished her program, it's like, it's not like, voila, you're fixed now. She was still struggling and kind of, trying to use those new tools that she had. And in 2013, Kim Head, with our Decoding Dyslexia chapter here in Arkansas, which is also known as the Dyslexia Project in Arkansas, she and several other advocates, teachers, tutors, had gotten our first dyslexia law passed in 2013. And so I think my daughter, she was at the end. I think she was still getting accommodations, but even when I talked to the person that was in charge of her 504 plan, they were just like, well, we don't have to follow that law till next year. That doesn't go into effect. And yeah.
Sorry. That is how they work, though. That is how it works.
The stuff that comes out of people's mouths sometimes
I know.
just makes you.
Technically, they are right. They don't have to follow the law until it goes into effect.
Well, and you talk about trauma. Parents have so much trauma from dealing with, the person in charge of IEPs and the person in charge of 504s. It's just a huge storm of stuff that goes on in our public school system. But anyway, so I knew in 2013, I kind of watched on Facebook of how this law was progressing. I really wanted to be down there at our Capitol. It's just a few blocks from my house. But I was still kind of in this struggle with my child, and also, but still wondering, what can I do? What needs to be done? So we get this law in 2013, and I think it becomes apparent that, just like the reaction my school had, well, we really don't have to do that right now. It doesn't go into effect till next year. And I think others were seeing that. And at some point on that Decoding Dyslexia page, there was kind of a call for anybody that wanted to go meet at the Faulkner County Library, which is in Conway, which it's still central Arkansas. It's about 20-30 minutes from Little Rock. And my daughters and I were going up to my mother's in the northwest part of the state, and I was told, I didn't even tell the girls. We got in the car to go, and I was like, oh, we're stopping in Conway. And we went into the library room, and that's where we met Kim Head, Audie Allenbaugh, Dallas Green, Scott Gann, I think another Mary Beth Rogers. I think Sharon Westerman, Bruce Westerman's wife, may have been at that meeting. Just a small collective of us, and my kids are like, what have you done now? And Audie is just she is a firecracker. Everyone in the state adores her. You either hate to see her coming or you love to see her coming. She's just brilliant. I mean, if you want to talk about dyslexic gifts, I mean, she was a math professor at UCA that eventually quit her job to continue to advocate all over the state. So that's basically her job. She doesn't get paid for it, doesn't get reimbursed for, gas mileage or anything. And she does the really heavy hitting all over the state. I will go all over the state, but with my job, at times I'm just like, I really have to do my work. But we all met there in the library, and the first thing that she got up and said, she said, I'm done singing Kumbaya. And I just laughed out loud. She just really tells it like it is. And that was 2015. And she really knew that she wanted to make sure these schools were following the first dyslexia law.
So how did you guys, what was you wanted to make sure the law was, followed. So what did you do to do that? And what led you down the road to where you were this year?
Well, we came back in the 2015 legislative session, and we found that we needed some teeth in our first dyslexia law. So the first law is that children with dyslexia have their needs met. I've got a little cheat sheet over here. It put screening in place. It laid out the groundwork for personnel and established timelines. But then we found that schools were really kind of ignoring this. And so the second dyslexia law clarified some language and established the strength of the Arkansas Dyslexia Resource Guide, the ADE, with a committee put that together. And I remember us going to the committee meetings in the summer. And it's interesting kind of how contentious even that could get at times. Mm-hmm. So we have a really wonderful Arkansas Dyslexia Resource Guide. And it's a great resource. I encourage anybody to go out on the internet and look for it. It's put out by our Arkansas Department of Education. And I believe it was updated in 2017.
So is that like our dyslexia handbook?
I think so.
It may be.
It
doesn't recommend particular programs or anything,
right.
But it talks about the characteristics and screening and different screening tools. It's like a 64-page.
Mm-hmm. Gives you the requirements for whatever program that the school is going to use. It says the school has to use a program, and it gives the requirements of what that program must have in it, along with screening and the rest of the guidelines. Mm-hmm. Correct?
So, yeah, ours is basically like that. It has a list of accommodations, suggested accommodations. I use that frequently for parents that are just new to this whole thing. And we also have a private page, and so we have all these things like this link and out on the files. So we always refer, because parents, when you get new parents in, they're always asking the same questions over and over. Mm-hmm. So we tried to create kind of a bank of information. So we clarified language, and we started going to meetings. And
let me clarify that, because on the phone you said you guys go to IEP meetings and 504 meetings. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, that is. That's how we have gotten into the schools, is parents, that have either contacted us and don't know where to go. And so we tell them the triggers to pull to get, screened, or evaluations, or full comprehensive eval. Or if they're just needing, just even, go to your school's website, look up the 504 or IEP person, email that person, copy the teacher. And at times now we even say copy us. I mean, people hate to teach, schools hate to see our names on these emails. I mean, they just take it more seriously, I guess. But yes, that's how we have that's the type of meetings that we are providing free advocacy. Is a parent will invite us to their IEP or 504 meeting. And, and we give as little or as much help as a parent would like. I have some parents that are just like, do I have to talk at all? Can you just do it all? And, and it's like, because they're so traumatized or they're so dyslexic themselves, they're having trouble processing all this information that's thrown at them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so we can do that, or we can, we let them run the meeting and then we'll interject, asking, show us the data for this, or, what program is that and what is the fidelity for it, and just trying to dig deeper in those meetings so that, when you leave there, you really understand what your child is getting. We had a parent last night.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, we had a parent last night post a question, that their child on their schedule, it says resource reading. And she said, so should I assume that she's getting dyslexia intervention? And I was just like, no, you need to ask what program, and then we go from there, get the name of the program, and then we'll start digging deeper. How much are they getting? How many's in the group? All those things.
Now, and you guys do this pro bono. I mean, you do it for free because you want to see change in your state and help these kids.
That's right. I mean, and our hope is that when we are able to help one child, one family get their needs met, that the staff at the school, that a light bulb will go off and, like, oh, this program won't work if we put 8 kids in the group,
right?
Or we can't just do this program for 20 minutes a day and expect that this is going to work. Oh, all of our class. We had one school, once we figured out that from different parents, and again, we have this private page, and so we'll just ask parents at this school district, chime in, how long does your child go to intervention? And we found that someone apparently in the school, I would assume this is what happened, didn't understand how this one program, when you do it in a group, the number of days. Because when you do it one-on-one, it is only 2 days a week. But when you do it in a group, it's 3 days a week. And then there was something about 45 minutes versus an hour. Anyway, they had misunderstood the fidelity, and all the kids getting dyslexia intervention were not getting the appropriate amount of time. Oh. So we actually were able, once we dug that out, we were actually able, to talk to the program author, talk to the appropriate people at school, get them together, and they did go back through and have to adjust all the schedules of the children getting intervention.
That's wonderful.
And so it is. It's all for free, and when I'm trying to work, on my projects, I'm answering text messages or Facebook messages or questions on our private page, and we all try to, when we get those, that we're all participating. It's not like one advocate is just assigned to do that. We all just jump in where we can. Mm-hmm. And, and things that are a little more complex, or different situations that are going on in different schools. I mean, I'll reach out to Audie, and say, okay, this is what the testing shows. Something doesn't seem right. What do you think? Or I'm going to this meeting tomorrow. You have any advice? And, I get people I went to high school with that I'll make posts on my public page on Facebook. I mean, we all advocate that way. We're very public about what's going on in our lives with our children or with other people, just craziness that we see that you would not believe what goes on in school districts, without revealing any confidences or anything. But I think that's what's really helped advocacy in Arkansas is we're so public about it. But no, I'll get people that, we'll put the stuff out there on our public pages, but I'll get private messages. And I think that happens to all of us. We'll all get because someone saw something, they may not comment on it on Facebook, but they will private message us asking for help.
Mm-hmm. Right. You have to stand up and tell your story and be, just completely transparent, because there's a lot of people out there that they're in the thick of it and they have no idea where to turn, what to do, who to talk to. And by hearing your story, they're like, okay, well, maybe I can do this. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going through. Let me reach out. And same thing with us. I mean, we have people do the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, close personal friends, they'll reach out privately and go, hey, this is, what's going on.
Well, and I think we probably all, and you probably do as well. I mean, I have people that, I can tell that something's already going on with their child, but they're not ready to hear it yet.
Right.
And so maybe you make a little, some hints, or you make some pointed Facebook posts, but it is gratifying when they're finally ready, because it's staring me in the face, because I'm so used to it now. I mean, I can hear it in children's speech. I can hear it in adult speech. I'm just like, yeah, you got some dyslexia going on there.
Yeah, dyslexic can identify another dyslexic from probably across the room.
Well, we have some advocates and some teachers that are advocates in our group, and they do. I mean, the children know. I mean, one of them, Christy Grimmett in South Arkansas, I mean, her son come home and say, so-and-so,
Yeah.
And my daughter, she does the same. I mean, I said, well, how do you know? And she said that their handwriting, or they're carrying around the same book that they're trying to read, but they're not progressing, with their reading, in half a year. I mean, they do. They know which ones are struggling at school. That's all you got to do is ask the kids.
Yeah.
Remember me telling you the story about carrying around the Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
Pretty much forever.
Yeah,
It's a big
exactly.
book too.
Yeah, and read the first 2 pages, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so,
I mean, yeah.
Amber, so do you guys, when you go into the IEP 504 meetings, do you record all the meetings, or do you suggest that the parents do recordings?
I record every meeting that I go to, and I think we all try to. And you don't even have to, by Arkansas law, I don't know how it is in every other state. I mean, if you're in a meeting, you can record yourself in a meeting without having to give notice or ask permission or anything. And very often we don't have to use those recordings ever, but I sat and listened to a meeting the other day that I'd had back in June, just to clarify some things, because we're going to go back to another meeting for over some accommodations. And I wanted to pull some of the things that were very telling that the speech language pathologist was saying, that even though she was saying it wasn't dyslexia, but these low scores were causing anxiety. I'm just kind of like, so there's just things that people will say. And sometimes, of course, during these meetings, some people just hang themselves. I mean, the staff, will just, and we have used some of the recordings to file due process complaints or state complaints. So it's very valuable. And it's also very valuable just as, for my parent, because the parents especially usually you're just so nerve wracked. I mean, going into these meetings, I used to be that way when I started doing it all the time as an advocate, but now, I've done it so much, it's fine. I mean, we're all, friendly, smiling. I mean, we don't get aggressive until there's a need to get aggressive, but we're always polite, never rude. But I think it is very helpful for parents to record the meetings. I have an iPhone, and I just use that voice record app that comes with it. I mean, so you don't even really have to go get any special recording apps or anything. And I just lay my phone on the table.
Cool.
Yeah,
I mean, I've done that too. So let me, and I think Stephen has too. It just helps. It helps get all the information, and then.
Well, you record it, and then you have it transcribed. That way, that there's no question about
what was said,
who did
who's
this,
going to do what,
how it was said, any of that. It just helps, especially when you're the parent going into this, because you are so emotionally involved. A lot of times you leave those meetings having more questions than what you went into it with.
Right. And you may not even retain everything
you're
because
not
it's
going
all,
to.
There's so much information to process.
And without that aid of being able to go back and go over what the meeting was about, and like you mentioned earlier, the parent that's sitting there having this IEP or the 504 meeting, especially in the case of dyslexia, the chances of them being dyslexic themselves are pretty high.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we
Most
have
definitely.
some parents that are, one of the terms we use is clobbered. I mean, that my youngest daughter, she's clobbered. My husband is clobbered. But yeah, I mean, we just there, again, the genetics of it, and if the parent didn't do well in school, chances are they're really not going to do well in these meetings, or even trying to get, realize that there is appropriate help for their child. They don't just have to, you don't have to just say, oh, I never could figure out reading and I survived and you will too.
Right.
Because we know that's not the case anymore.
It's definitely not the case. I mean, there's so many people that are in prison that can attest to that piece of it. So, so you talked about your daughter, your youngest daughter, going through Take Flight, and then quote unquote graduating from it. So I guess that happened, and she went through the program by what, second or third grade?
Yeah, she started in third grade and we finished it at the end of fourth grade.
So she did a year of remediation.
Well, she did two.
Oh, kindergarten to okay.
Well,
Third
the third
grade
grade
and
year
fourth
and the fourth grade year.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
And then she used her accommodations to help try to level the playing field.
Yeah, and she did really well for a long time. And when she got into sixth grade, so she finished Take Flight at the end of fourth grade. And fifth grade was a horrible year. We had two teachers who were mother and daughter, oddly enough, who would not follow her accommodations. And it was to the point that finally at the end of fifth grade, I mean, I just told Rory, I said, just do the best you can. If you have a quote unquote bad grade, I will fix it, because I will go in there and I will make them do your accommodations for your grading. But anyway, those two teachers were not rehired. But it was a nightmare year, and we were expecting to have a better year because we'd, gotten this intervention under our belt. Sixth grade was awesome. She had some really wonderful teachers, and just that kind of just, I guess, took the pressure off. And she came home one day and she said, well, I'm not stupid. And I was just like, of course, I've been telling you this since you were in kindergarten. What has happened that you finally realize it? And she said, well, we got our grades today, our midterms or whatever it was at the time. And she said, I have A's and my friends have C's. And she said, and I feel bad for them.
Oh,
And, so on one hand, she's feeling relief.
that's
and on the other
fantastic,
hand,
though.
it was. And I told her, I said, well, you're probably doing better than they are because you've been taught how to read. And that's, when we get into these other literacy laws, that was for our group was such a turning point when we started looking at every school's data that they send to the Arkansas Department of Education. So we were starting just to be all over that website, looking at scores and retention rates and just everything. And we realized that our state at the time, like only 27% of third graders read on grade level.
Wow.
And so we're like, okay, so if 20% are dyslexic, what's wrong with these other 50%? And, so that turned us to curriculum failure and the methods that, we use in Arkansas to teach reading that obviously are not working or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we became, even at that point, kind of a shift from just dyslexia advocates to literacy advocates.
So at what year did your group, the Arkansas Dyslexia Support Group, start legislating? You legislated for the science of reading, right? And to replace the whole language reading method?
Yeah, so 2015 was that second dyslexia law. And so between 2015 and 2017, we had this like aha moment with all this data. And we were really working behind the scenes and trying to get people to listen to us and look at the data that they've all collected. And so that was, astonishing too, is that schools, everybody talks about testing the kids to death. But the problem is for all of that testing, we don't really use the data.
Right.
Right.
So in 2017, that is when in Arkansas we really saw a shift, and we were able to introduce the science of reading laws, and the one that maybe we're very proud of, maybe most proud, is that we did meet with different people in the colleges of education at our different universities and figured out what would be a deal killer for them as far as a law that said that they would teach the science of reading to pre-service teachers. And so we were able to do some tweaking during that session, and so we did come away with a law for the colleges of education.
So what's the name of the law? I'd love to read it. Do you remember?
That is Act 416 in the 2017 session.
Okay.
And it says the bill reworks colleges of education methods for teaching future teachers, and it requires a standalone science of reading test for pre-service teachers before they can get their certification for undergraduate.
So will you post that out on Facebook so we can
I will.
or actually just put a copy of it on Empower Dyslexia?
I will do.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because I'd like to see what read what you guys did.
Yeah.
And then because that just was passed last legislative session, like this year or last year?
2017, so 2 years.
Okay. And have you guys noticed an upswing at all yet, or is it probably too early?
Well, we've had one college that's been doing it for quite a while, the University of Central Arkansas in Conway.
Mm-hmm.
Audie, that's
that's
where she was a math
she's
professor.
from.
And then her sister, Dee Dee Kane, is a professor in the special education department. So they've been teaching a portion of a dyslexia intervention to their undergraduates that were going through special education for I don't know how many years, probably 5 years, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
where the students got a portion of that program, but then they had to go finish it to be certified in the program after they graduated. And then they would also use that in some of the school districts where they were student teaching. They would work with these struggling readers. And so they've known for a while what's needed to happen. So UCA has got it going on. Supposedly Arkansas Tech, ATU, is doing well with it, has changed over, hired a new professor some of these professors, they say, because they have a master's or a PhD, they say they know it all,
Right.
but they apparently don't realize they don't know it all.
Well, what reading program were they, teaching educating our teachers, in college?
We are having pushback from at least one of the schools. I'm not sure how Fayetteville University of Arkansas is really doing with it. I know years ago they had severe pushback before this law even came into effect. But ASU, Arkansas State University, we're having severe issues with them. I mean, they're claiming it's their professors' academic freedom to teach guided reading. They're a member of ILA. And, they say that to keep their membership current in ILA, that they have to teach guided reading. And we're just like,
what is guided reading? I don't know what that is.
That's whole language.
Yeah, no.
It's whole language.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, whole language just doesn't work for kids struggling
we've
readers.
got-
It's
we've
great
got
for
college-
people that can, I think, teach themselves to read, like just by repetition and memorization.
The 5 to 25%.
Mm-hmm.
They say 5% are like high lexic that they can just figure out reading.
Yeah, they don't need anybody to teach them.
But we've got college students at ASU that are in the teacher education program, and they'll send us screenshots of their books, that principles of guided reading. And what's going to happen is those students, unless they, pay for an extra course, to usually through like learning a dyslexia intervention, when they talk about the science of reading principles. And if you're doing, something like that, where you go in to get some extra training, those students, when they have to take that test, it's the Massachusetts reading test is what it is. They're not going to be able to pass it because going to have all the knowledge. I mean, that test is hard. There is an online practice version of it, and it's hard. It's like, what is the difference in phonemic awareness and phonics? And pick out an example, pick out the example of phonemic awareness, pick out the example of phonics.
And you're saying that this test is what educators have to
That's
take.
what the pre-service teachers so theoretically, you could get your degree from the university you've chosen to go to be a teacher and not pass that test. And if you don't pass that test, you cannot get your teacher license. So, and there is a federal law, I think, that, which I don't know if anyone will pull the trigger on that, if you've gone, to a schooling program and you don't come away and be able to go out into the workforce, I can't remember what it's called, but there is some federal law pertaining to that. And then we're going to ask in the next session that, they review all the state schools' budgets. And so we're going to ask, that they put a hold on the ASU budget if they're not going to follow our literacy laws.
Haha.
There you go.
and there's a few legislators that, seem to be like that, that they seem supportive.
Okay, good. Well, I hope that goes well.
Oh, I know. And that's it. We've just kind of, now it's like now that we've gotten in and we know how to do stuff and we've got our contacts, different legislators that we know are proponents of literacy. It's kind of like a well-oiled machine now. But at first, I mean, it was tough. It was really weird this year at the session, hearing all the legislators, hearing the science of reading roll off their tongues. I mean, everybody is on board with it at the Capitol.
That's great. That's really great.
I mean, it was very weird because the previous session in 2017, we sat while we were watching one of our bills be voted on. We sat while another legislator from the House floor, I don't remember if it was the House or the Senate floor, but she said that dyslexics were sucking the life out of the public schools.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah, so there's still some out there.
So Amber, we have about 2 minutes. Is there anything? The time goes by fast, doesn't it, Stephen? Is there anything that you would like to tell people that are listening out there of what they can do to help their state? Get involved in their state politics and make changes like you guys have.
Well, some of the things that we did. I mean, it's like we have shirts, and I have my Arkansas, one of our dyslexia shirts on, and it's got the names of the children and with famous dyslexics on the back of the shirt. But this is like the first shirt that we did, and the school, and when we would go advocate, we would wear our red shirts, and the schools would say, "We do not want these red shirts coming." And so
beware of the red shirts.
So being more public, using your Facebook. We'll have parents post on our private page, some really, either heart-wrenching or really heartwarming stories. And I'll say, please go post this on your page so your friends know what's going on. We had $5 name tags made, and it's amazing the respect you get when you go into a school meeting and you've got a name tag. Oh. It's just little things. I mean, Audie says that we changed the face of education with $5 name tags.
Who would have thought it?
The other piece of it is make sure that you know what you're talking about. As far as the parents, become educated in what it is that your child needs and why your child needs it. Make sure that you go in there for and leave the emotion out of it. As hard as that is, you need to go in there and be very factual and ask exactly what you need and accept no less.
Well, we're very much about the data.
Yep.
And so before we go to a meeting, we'll ask for the parent for a copy of all the evaluations that have been done, or if one has not been done, we will pull the trigger on telling them how to do that. And then, now that we have so many parents we advocate for, our time is precious.
Right.
And we really try to make sure they've got all their ducks in a row so that we can, and we don't usually even look at their data. all the evaluations and whatnot until like the day before the meeting, because we're just kind of like crisis management, just looking at whose ever meeting is next.
Right.
But that is so important, is, trying not to get flustered and get the data. Ask for the data, ask how you took these measurements. If the school says, your child can read, record them reading at home. And if it's too embarrassing to have your child do it in a meeting, but, when they're, reading, record them at home when they're maybe not aware of it, and then show them how your child is reading.
That's great. That's great advice, Amber. Unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. We would love to talk more with you, and maybe we can hopefully have you back on the show soon. But thank you so much for joining us today.
We're very happy to have others like you and like us in the trenches with us as we move forward.
Yeah. And as you guys know, you can go to our website, empowerdyslexia.info, and get the letter templates to make that evaluation with your school, so that you will know what's going on with your child. Thanks for joining us this week, and we hope to have you tune in next week. We're going to have, I think,
something great.
Oh, yeah, something wonderful. So tune in. Y'all have a great weekend.
See you then.